Hello, everybody. Welcome to Monster Mondays. And for today's episode, we have a collection of smaller short stories put together in such a way that we can enjoy them gradually. And then there's going to be one long one at the end, because why not? Anyway, that said, I don't have much else to say for the intro on this part, so let's get right in. For the first one, we have one of Sirenhead, something that a lot of people were just like, that came out in 2018, and that was like last year that it started gaining popularity and traction. So apparently, someone by the name of Navera Suhel made a fiction of sorts for it, so I said, alright, well, let's see what she's got for us. Even though the original person who came up with it was just an artist, so I don't know if they had a backstory they had in mind with this. I couldn't find it on the surface web, that's for sure. Alright. This was posted May 17th, 2020. All was peacefully quiet until a jolting but steady thumping sprang from the front foyer. Knock, knock. The sound came again, stronger this time. It was the end of November and cold as a gold digger's ass. Lizzie and Mark were alone and at home and wrapped up in each other's arms in front of the fire. Both of them wondered, who could it be? Who could it be now? Alrighty. Lizzie's parents were out of the city visiting a sick relative, and she invited Mark, her new boyfriend of 3 months, to come stay with her. They were both so in love. Mark stood up and went towards the door. He turned the knob and the door opened. There was no one to be seen outside. The lawn in the front was silent as the grave. Mark couldn't see anyone outside without giving a second thought or look. He closed the door and went back to the cozy living room. After about 5 minutes, someone knocked on the door again. This time Lizzie came to check who was outside. She thought maybe some neighbor's kid was playing a trick on them. She heard a noise coming from the woods at the far end corner of the house. She turned the flashlight of her phone and went outside into the woods. Lizzie opened the door and went outside. She heard leaves rustle in the bushes. Boys, stop playing tricks. If I found you, I'm going to lock you down in my dark basement, Lizzie growled. The rustling got louder. Lizzie went near the bushes but couldn't find anyone. She assessed her surroundings one more time before going back inside. She was about to close the door when she heard a cry for help. Help, please. Lizzie, help me. I'm stuck, yelled a woman. It came from the outer left side of the house. Lizzie realized that it was her mom's voice. Lizzie ran towards the voice without giving a second thought about how her mother just came here. She heard the noise coming from the woods at the far end of the corner of the house. She turned the flashlight of her phone on inside the woods. She took a few steps inside the woods and screamed as hard as she could. At that moment, she knew she was going to die. Lizzie couldn't understand what she was seeing. Standing in front of her was a 40-foot-tall humanoid creature with a heavily emaciated, near-skeletal frame covered in dried, mummified flesh in the color of rusted metal. Its limbs were disproportionately long and thin, with arms almost as long as the entire body, ending in huge bony hands. Where a human's head and neck would have been is a thin pole of flesh with 2 sirens attached to them, and several black wires snaking around its neck and into its upper shoulders pressed against its abdomen. Sirenhead picked Lizzie up with one grasp. Lizzie tried to get out of its grip, but it was too strong. She even tried to scream, but it was as if her voice went away. Sirenhead shrieked loudly through his siren-like head and ripped off Lizzie's head right off her body. The body became numb and the screams died away. There was no sign of life left now. Inside the house, Mark wondered where Lizzie was and if she had found some prankster outside. Mark went up and out and searched the area, but his eyes couldn't see Lizzie anywhere. Mark yelled her name a few times. Lizzie, Lizzie, baby, where are you? Did you find someone? Yelled Mark. No one answered. Mark tried calling her phone, but it was powered off. He tried a few more times, but no reply. He was starting to get worried. He was going to look for Lizzie on the street when he heard Lizzie's voice. Hey Mark, I'm here. Look what I found, Lizzie exclaimed excitedly. Where are you, Lizzie? Asked Mark worriedly. I'm in the woods. Come here. You wouldn't believe what I found, Lizzie said. Mark went into the woods. He couldn't imagine that a horrendous monster was waiting for him in the woods. As he was going more and more inside the woods, he saw long, lanky legs between the trees. Mark felt a shiver up his spine. Without giving a second thought, he turned and ran towards the house as fast as he could. The monster gave a loud shriek, and Mark fell to the ground. Everything went black. Author's notes, thank you. This is my first time writing a short story. It is about the latest trending Sirenhead character. What do you think about the story? Is it good? Is it bad? Do you like it or not? Lilith. Writings by Marla Bishop and guests. Interesting. And final thoughts on that? Short but sweet. Didn't overstay its welcome. It certainly leaves a lot of room for there to be a factor of creepiness. That is, can you really trust that the voice you swear is someone you know is really someone you know? But that's pretty much all the commentary I have on that. For our next one, we're going to be looking at a so-called channel that you can find within the static of your TV. It is called Channel Infinity. And so here it goes. There's a legend circulating around the television industry. It's about Channel Infinity. Channel Infinity is hard to get to and reports various to what it actually is. I will tell you how to get there and what to do. Acquire a television, preferably with an analog for the best experience. The older the better. Acquire a remote control. It does not have to go with the television you're using. Turn on the TV, set it to a static channel or just a plain black screen if you're using a digital TV. Basically any that you do not receive. Leave the room for about 3 hours. If you have a significant other in the house, have them with you. It is also best to call over a few friends. During those 3 hours, you should acquire a few items. I will list them in order from most important to least. Note, none of these are mandatory, but they help. You will want an item you hold dear, 2 handheld mirrors, a gun, firearm, or ranged weapons, a favorite book, a mobile communications device, a key, a sledgehammer or pickaxe. After roughly 3 hours have passed, re-enter the room. Everyone else wait outside the door. Close the door. Stare at the static or blank screen or whatever you set the TV to until you feel disoriented or freaked out. Call the others into the room. Give the item you hold dear to the person you care most about in the room, and then send them back out. If you did not grab an item that you hold dear, hug that person and whisper a secret in their ear. Send them back out and command them not to come back in no matter what until you open the door again. Now, this will be harder for them if there are more of them, but it'll be safer for you if there are more people. Trust me. Hold the mirrors so one reflects the television screen into the other, and the second reflects you, so it looks as if the television is behind you. Stay like this until a question appears on the screen. If you did not grab the mirrors, sit in a chair facing the TV until you hear a noise. Grab the remote. There will be a question on screen. Press channel up to answer yes and channel down to answer no. There will be anywhere from 3 to 26 questions if the reports are to be trusted. The questions will be anywhere from trivial to deep philosophical personal questions. Answer truthfully or you will not succeed in reaching Channel Infinity. After the questions, one of 3 things will happen. Your favorite show of all time will air, but all of the characters will be heart-wrenchingly killed in the episode. You will see a picture of your least favorite person or thing ever. This is where you use the firearm or other weapon. Break the TV screen with the gun or other ranged weapon. It will then fix itself. Note, this is obviously the easiest of the 3 things. A strange shimmery vortex will surround you and you'll be pulled into an alternate dimension. If you find yourself there, here's what to do. You will find yourself at a twisted replica of your house. You'll need to go to your room to find the 4 items listed that you'll need for this part. Take them, exit your house. Outside will be a more evil-looking version of our world with a red sky, a gray sun, dark orange plants, and an ever-present thin vermilion mist. You must go to the nearest public building, maybe a school, mall, gas station. Use the key on the door and enter. It will fit the lock. If you did not get one, climb in through a window. Upon entering, you'll find a room with only one entrance. Sit down and begin reading the book. If you did not get a book, just sit down and be bored or scared. You'll hear footsteps outside of the door sometime within the next hour. Do not look up from the book. After you can no longer hear the footsteps, count to 250 out loud. Every 10 numbers, you'll notice another footstep closer and closer to the door. Upon reaching 250, you will hear a knock on the door. If there are 3 knocks, open the door. If there are 4, say, "I forbid you" twice, and then open the door. You'll see a stone statue of someone you love deeply outside the door. It could be a family member, best friend, romantic partner, or even a fictional character. Smash its head to bits with a sledgehammer or pickaxe. If it's a female, also destroy the left hand. If you did not get a hammer or pick, push the statue over. Exit the building from the entrance you came through. It'll be night. Look at the moon. It will be either pink or green, and either full or half. If it is pink and half, pull out your phone and call your third most recent contact. Pink and full, pull out the phone and dial a random number. Before anyone picks up, bite through your tongue. If you do not get the device, pretend to do the things above. Green and half, strip off all your clothing and sprint back to your house. Do not look behind you no matter what. Green and full, to put it bluntly, you're screwed. You'll be dead within half an hour. If it is one of the first three, you will wake up in front of the television and continue the ritual. After this, you will have reached channel infinity. What you do now is up to you. If you go to the guide function, you'll see shows listed such as The Meaning of Life or How to Acquire True Love. Choose one. Note, the more people you have outside the door with you will determine the revelations that are the shows. The more people, the better chance you have of seeing shows with more life-changing results. Or if you keep watching the static without going to guide or breaking eye contact with the television, you'll see a series of images that will, if deciphered, reveal the answer to your most important question. There are at this point many options, too many to write here. Just do what you feel like you must and something will happen. The overwhelming majority of things will be good, but some will be bad. You may leave the room at any point, however there are two catches. You may never speak of what you learned after accessing Channel Infinity, and you may only reach Channel Infinity 4 times in your life. I hope you find the experience enlightening. Written by Jet Cyber. Content is available under Creative Commons by SA. Okay. Alright, and final thoughts. That was good. You know, it's a ritual creepypasta, so it leaves you with a bit of a mystery feeling about it, and it almost makes you want to try it for yourself. But at the same time, you got a 1 in 4 chance that you won't come back alive, so do so at your own risk if there is any truth to it. Other than that, we will move on to our next story. And as we go along, you'll notice there's probably a bit of a theme to some of these, why I put them together like this. I'll let you decipher that for yourself, even though it's probably obvious. Alright, Candle Cove, local kids show, from the Net Nostalgia Forum. Does anyone remember this kids show? It was called Candle Cove. I must have been 6 or 7. I never found a reference to it anywhere. So I think it was a local station around 1971 or 1972. I lived in Ironton at the time. I don't remember which station, but I remember it was on at a weird time, like 4 p.m. That was a post from SkyShield 33. And then Mike Painter 65 replies, "It seems very familiar to me. I grew up outside of Ashland and I was 9 years old in 72. Candle Cove, was it about pirates? I remember there being a pirate marionette at the mouth of the cave talking to a little girl." SkyShield 33 responds, "Yes, okay, I'm not crazy. I remember Pirate Percy. I was always kind of scared of him. He looked like he was built from parts of other dolls, really low budget. His head was an old porcelain baby doll. Looked like an antique that didn't belong to the body." I don't remember what the station was. I don't think it was WTSF, though. Jaren 2005 said, "Sorry to resurrect this old thread, but I know exactly what show you mean. SkyShield, I think Candle Cove ran for only a couple of months in 71, not 72. I was 12 and watched it a few times with my brother. It was Channel 58, whatever station it was. My mom would let me switch to it after the news. Let me see what I remember. It took place in Candle Cove, and it was about a little girl who imagined herself to be friends with pirates. The pirate ship was called the Laughing Stock, and Pirate Percy wasn't an excellent pirate because he got scared too easily. And there was a Calliope music constantly playing. Don't remember the girl's name, Janice, Jade, or something. I think it was Janice." SkyShield 33 responded, "Thank you, Jaren. Memories flooded back when you mentioned the Laughing Stock in Channel 58. I remember the bow of the ship was a wooden smiling face with a lower jaw submerged. It looked like it was swallowing the sea, and it had that awful Ed Wynn voice and laugh. I especially remember how jarring it was when they switched from the wooden plastic model to a foam puppet version of the head that talked." Mike Painter 65 says, I remember now too. Do you remember this part, Sky Shill? You have to go inside. Sky Shill responded, ugh, Mike, I just got a chill reading that. Yes, I remember. That's what the ship always told Percy when there was a spooky place he had to go in, like a cave or dark room where the treasure was. And the camera would push in on the laughingstock's face with each pause. You have to go inside, with his two eyes askew, and that flopping foam jaw and that fishing line that opened and closed it. Ugh, it looked so cheap and awful. You guys remember the villain? He had a face that was just a handlebar mustache above a really tall, narrow teeth. Kevin Hart said, I honestly thought the villain was Pirate Percy. I was about 5 when the show was on Nightmare Fuel. Jared 2005 said, that wasn't the villain. The puppet with the mustache, that was the villain's sidekick, Horace Horrible. He had a monocle too, but it was on the top of the mustache. I used to think that many only had one eye. But then the villain was another marionette, the Skin Taker. I can't believe they let us watch back then. Kevin Hart said, Jesus H. Christ, the Skin Taker. What kind of kids show were we watching? I seriously couldn't look at the screen when the Skin Taker showed up. He just descended out of nowhere on his strings. Just a dirty skeleton wearing brown top hat and cape and his glass eyes that were too big for his skull. Christ almighty. Sky Shill 33 said, wasn't his top hat and cloak all sewn up crazily? Wasn't that supposed to be children's skin? Mike Painter 65 said, yeah, I think so. I remember the mouth didn't open and close. The jaw just slid back and forth. I remember that little girl asked, why does your mouth move like that? The Skin Taker didn't take a look at the girl, but at the camera and said, to grind your skin. Sky Show 33 said, I'm so relieved that other people remember this terrible show. I used to have this awful memory, a bad dream I had where the opening jingle ended, the show faded in from black, and all the characters were there. Still, the camera was just cutting to each of their faces, and they were just screaming, and the puppets and marionettes were flaying spastically. And all the screaming. The girl was just moaning and crying like she'd been through hours of this. I woke up many times from that nightmare. I used to wet the bed when I had it. Kevin Hart said, I don't think that was a dream. I remember that. I remember that was an episode. No, Axel said, no, that's not possible. There's no plot or anything. I mean, literally just standing in the place crying and screaming for the whole show. Kevin Hart said, maybe I'm manufacturing the memory because you said that, but I swear to God I remember seeing what you described. They just screamed. Jaren 2005 responds, oh God, yes, the little girl Janice. I remember seeing her shake, and the Skin Taker screaming through his gnashing teeth. His jaw careening so wildly, I thought it would come off his wire hinges. I turned it off, and that was the last time I watched. I ran to tell my brother, and we didn't dare turn it back on. Mike Painter 65 said, I visited my mom today at the nursing home. When I was little, in the early 70s, I asked her about when I was 8 or 9 if she remembered a kids show, Candle Cove. She said she was surprised I could remember that, and I asked why. She said, because I used to think it was so strange. She said, I'm going to go watch Candle Cove now, Mom, and when you tune to the TV, to static, and just watch dead air for 30 minutes, you had a big imagination with your little pirate show. Alrighty, and that was Candle Cove. Final thoughts? Wow. You know, that was pretty well described. I mean, although it was in a forum format, which is fairly unconventional, I must say it painted quite the vivid image in my mind of just how, you know, maybe if the supernatural is real, then maybe maybe looking at static for too long will actually show you some pretty disturbing things that look like a kid's show to you when you're little, but I never really watched the static for too long. All it just sounded like was to me the whole time. But then again, I didn't have the most imagination when I was little, so maybe that's why. And now for our last story, 1999. And this one is the longer of all the stories, so prepare yourself a cup of coffee if you need it. If you're watching this at home, and pause the video. You'll have about 5 seconds to do so. And here we go. In a cellar somewhere, standing before the camera, a man in a tatty moth-eaten bear suit says hello to a small handful of watching children. This is a public access show viewed by only a small number of fans, a small number that includes you. As a child, you love Mr. Bear. You don't care that he broadcasts from his cellar, that there's something remarkably dark about the way these polished button eyes stare into the camera lens. As a child, you don't see these things. When Mr. Bear suggests you write to him, you jump at the chance. When he writes back asking you to visit him, you jump at that chance too. As a child, there are some things you don't see. You don't see that the man beneath the bear suit or that bears have teeth and claws. As a child, you don't see. And of course, some things that you aren't supposed to. $19.99, also sometimes referred to as Mr. Bear's Cellar or Calden Local 21, is a creepypasta story about a fictional TV show. A kids' television program, and it is claimed to have been shown on a public access station that was only available to a minimal viewership within a tiny geographical area. The story is set 10 years after the show was supposed to have gone off the air, giving an account of the series alleged to have been hosted by a character named Mr. Bear. Essentially, a man in a bear suit was a parody of Bear in the Big Blue House and something akin to Barney the Dinosaur with a bear in place of a purple T-Rex. It is revealed that as the story goes on, Mr. Bear invited his audience to write to him, which the narrator did. In a typical Lucky Escape narrative, the boy is encouraged to meet with Mr. Bear at a given address, but he finds the police searching the place when he goes there with his father. It is revealed that late episodes in the show involved Mr. Bear burning children alive, with our narrator realizing as he discovers this that the same thing would have happened to him if he'd gone to the house alone or earlier. The story famously ended on a cliffhanger with the narrator explaining that he had found an email address supposedly belonging to Mr. Bear. The audience is then left in the dark as to whether he contacted him in the communication or meeting outcome. And here's the story itself. 1999 creepypasta. The year is 1999. That sentence brings me back to my senior kindergarten class when I was 5 years old, when we used to read out the date on the blackboard every single day. However, the year 1999 exists as a stain in my mind and memory that will not go away no matter how I try to forget it. 1999 marked the year I lost my first tooth, my first time on a plane, and unfortunately, the early loss of my childhood innocence. It all started as that one memory that refuses to be wiped with the new or old TV. At the time, Pokemon was the latest fad to hit school. Pokemon cards, games, stickers, and the most popular TV show. So of course every time I came home from school I would stay glued to the TV until Pokemon came on at 5. The only problem was that my dad watched the news at 5:30 and Pokemon episodes were back to back, which means I'd had to miss an episode every day, something I whined on about. My dad got tired of hearing me complain every day. That's probably why he went and bought another TV. My dad put the TV he bought in my room. Unfortunately, it was just an old small boob tube with rabbit ears even. It also had 20 channels available, not including the channel Pokemon was on. I recall I didn't care though. I was just thrilled to have my own TV in my room. After surfing through the channels, I concluded only Channel 2, TVO Kids, was worth watching. So I watched that for a while. It wasn't until a few months until I discovered Channel 21. One day in April, I was flipping through the channels trying to see if Pokemon was on. I pressed Channel 21 into the remote hoping there were more channels, and to my delight there were. My dad was surprised too, but he let me watch it because it seemed to have kids programs. The channel was called Calden Local 21, and I found it was indeed broadcasted from Calden, Ontario, a city very close to mine. The shows I saw in Calden Local 21 looked poorly made, and I never understood what was going on in them half the time. However, as I grew up, every time I thought of the channel, I realized more and more how messed up these shows were, and I had to ask myself, what the fuck was I watching? The following is a list of shows and episodes I remember seeing on Calden 21. How I remember such details even disturbs me, but I guess things like this stand in your mind for a while. The channel only ran a few shows, probably because it was only operational between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. April 1999, Mr. Bear's Cellar, episode 12. A very sketchy name if you were to look at it nowadays. The show featured a guy wearing a bear mascot costume who'd get a new visitor into his cellar every day. He was always a kid. The show was filmed with a camcorder, and not a very good one either. The police asked me a lot of questions about this show. The episode started with Mr. Bear sitting at a table playing checkers by himself. He sat there playing for a bit until there was a knock on the door. Small bit of comedy for a moment. It's interesting that similar to the creepypasta I happened to write a while ago. Adam the Forsaken. Well, I don't know if it was in the creepypasta or if it was just in the novel, but he was playing checkers by himself when this fat blonde girl came in and, knocked it off the table. And I'm thinking, now that I'm reading this part, I'm like, this does sound familiar, except, nobody did that to him. Anyway, back to the story. He sat there playing for a bit until there was a knock on the door. The camera was then looking up at the stairs at the door when there was another knock. Mr. Bear climbed the stairs and opened the door to reveal 2 young children. One was a boy about my age, and the other was a girl who looked about 8. Mr. Bear danced in delight and then started talking to the kids. I couldn't hear any of them that well. I remember Mr. Bear then led the kids into a cellar, which was quite dark, only lit by a small oil lamp on the table. I can't really remember much more except him singing a song which I couldn't hear too well either, probably because of the large bear mask. The episode ended with them playing hide-and-seek with the kids hiding in a closet and Mr. Bear counting. May 1999. Soup and Spoon. I didn't think this was even a show. I think it was more of a particular movie thing. All I know is I stopped watching Chaldean Local 21 for a while because I thought the show was too stupid. Especially since Pokemon now came on at 4:30 and 5. I don't remember much of this, but it showed a can of soup and a spoon attached to strings, swinging back and forth as if someone was holding them and dangling them in front of the camera. Interestingly, though, the show was shot in the basement, which looked just like the one used in Mr. Bear's cellar. Like I said, I can't remember much. The only thing I can remember clearly was the end. The entire thing was only half an hour and just included stuff I found stupid, such as the spoon chasing the soup around, trying to eat him. The ending showed a table and 7 kids sitting around it with a bowl of soup in front of them. They were sitting and looking at the camera, but with confused, almost frightened faces. The cameraman then held the can of soup in front of the kids and said, "Spoon's ready." And then it just stopped. July 1999. It was summer and I hadn't watched Channel 21 for a while, until one day when I slept over at my friend's house and then decided to check it out again. My friend had gotten a TV in his room for his 6th birthday, so we stayed up very late. For us, 9:30 was very late. And watched TV. That's when I remembered Channel 21 and brought it up to my friend. We decided to see if it was on, and to our surprise, it was. They must have changed the broadcasting time. Mr. Bear's Cellar, episode 23. This episode was entertaining for my friend and me, mainly because it had sworn. However, when I think of this episode, I realized something was definitely wrong when it was filmed. The episode started with the camera on its side facing Mr. Bear, who was walking upstairs to the cellar door. The camera then blacked out for about a second before fading in, back upright and meeting Mr. Bear. There was also another kid talking to him, but this kid looked about 11 or 12. He talked to Mr. Bear for a while, but couldn't hear well, again with the crappy camcorder, until the kid started raising his voice. The kid was saying how late and his sister, how he and his sister had to go home because it was late. You could also hear more talking in the background. I remember Mr. Bear clearly saying, "Get the fuck out, you're not invited," with a deep voice muffled by a dark bear mask. I remember my friend and I looking at each other and laughing at the mention of the forbidden F word. But the episode got weirder. He began climbing the stairs before turning around and seeing how he'd call the police. Mr. Bear started to break into a run towards the kid who started screaming as well. The camera then cut out, and that was the end of the episode. The channel turned to static shortly after. Oh, another thing this kind of reminds me of is I remember writing kind of a short piece that was to be a scene for a future book, and it was kind of supposed to be sort of Tales from the Crypt format, and but the story was called Death by Kindness, and basically it involved a bunch of furry children sitting around or maybe it was human children, sitting around this dinner table to be served a pie. But the pie was laced with poison, so they all died, and that was pretty much the idea I had at the time. I haven't implemented that into any books yet, but if any readers out there happen to see that, yeah, it had been in the works for a long time. Now back to the story again. August 1999. I didn't want to watch Channel 21 after that. In August, I grew more curious to see Mr. Bear's cellar for some reason, though. The last episode I saw of Mr. Bear was weird and had swearing, which made me think the show was meant for teenagers. Nonetheless, I flipped onto Channel 21 when my dad was busy. Mr. Bear's Cellar, episode 28. Apparently, this episode played the entire month of August. It was studied a lot by the police. The whole episode was just Mr. Bear sitting in a chair talking to the audience. Hello, kids. Do you want to visit my cellar? If you do, please write me a letter at this address. The screen then switched to a white screen with multicolored letters reading the address and what remained of the rest of the episode. This repeated for 5 hours every day until September came. And guess what I actually did? I sent Mr. Bear, or that sick bastard who betrayed him, a letter. I mostly did it out of curiosity. My dad was okay with it because he thought it was a legit kids show. But then again, he never saw any of what was on Channel 21. So I wrote the letter using my best writing possible. I think I just said how I wanted to meet Mr. Bear, so my dad sent the letter to the address Mr. Bear told on the show. It stayed on all day anyway, for some reason. It took about a week to get a response, which I was surprised I did. I still have the letter I received on August 15th, 1999. The letter read, Dear Elliot, thank you ever so much for your letter. I would love to have you in my cellar. We play games, watch movies, and go fire camping in the middle of the woods. Come to my house at, the police cut out this address, Caldian, Ontario, Canada. I look very forward to having fun with you. Love, Mr. Bear. I cannot believe my dad never found this sketchy because he actually took me to the house, and then that's when the police became involved. Those endless questions, those pictures of terrified kids, the woods. That brings me to why I'm writing this blog. That psycho and his friends did some fucked up shit back then, and now it seems like he's trying to get into contact with me again. The entire police thing is coming back. That has brought 1999 back to me over a decade later, and it's happening again. Update, November 14th, 2009. People have been emailing me asking me exactly what happened in 1999. I'll get to that. Those weird TV shows I was watching were apparently meant to attract kids to Mr. Bear's house. What Mr. Bear did shocked the entire town. My dad actually drove to Caldion along with the address Mr. Bear left in the letter. The house was actually in the outskirts of town in the open farmland. I still remember that house. It looked like an older farmhouse that looked to have been built in the early 1900s. The windows were all boarded up and the place looked in a state of disrepair. As we walked up to the house, I remember my dad checking the address repeatedly and looking at the home in disbelief. Then the door opened. I expected Mr. Bear to be at the door, but was surprised to see a police officer emerge from the creaking doorway. The officer began talking to my dad while I quickly asked if this was Mr. Bear's house. The officer's face cringed slightly and muttered, "Oh God," or something like that. He started whispering to my dad so I couldn't hear, although my dad told me to go to the car anyway, and then we just went home. My dad was quiet the whole way home. I felt something strange had happened. My dad never told me what happened for a while. I forgot about it anyway, too. Channel 21 no longer came on, and when I asked about it, my dad would not acknowledge its existence. I think it was when I was 13 where I learned the truth. I remembered Channel 21 one day and I asked my dad about it. I guess he finally decided I should hear the truth. Caldian Local 21 was a local TV channel that ran from October 1997 to August 1999 in the Peel region of Ontario. The entire channel was made from the house in Caldian, the one I visited, and run by a man who was not really known by anyone in town. The channel was only available to older TVs because the signal was only picked up by rabbit ears, weaker frequency. The man created all the shows on the channel, all of which were kids' shows. He was Mr. Bear, and he was the mysterious cameraman. The real reason he created the track was more disturbing than what was initially thought. As you might have already guessed, he kidnapped kids and held them in their cellar. But while most people thought he was a serial child molester, he really wanted to use the kids for another purpose. The day I arrived, the man had fled his house the night before, the day before the police went in for their investigation. I wasn't the only one who was watching. Update, December 2nd, 2009. Sorry for not answering any questions for so long. I haven't accessed my email account for some time. Anyway, let me finally set things straight about what I know. Back in October, I visited the house previously owned by the man who ran Caldian Local 21. 2 women lived there operating a daycare business. How ironic. Now to answer the questions you guys emailed me. Question, who else watched Caldian Local 21? Answer, I know of other people who watched it for sure, including those kids who wound up at Mr. Bear's house. After some Google searches, I found a few people on Neo-Seeker forums discussing these shows from Caldian Local 21. They talked about 2 shows I watched and another 2 shows I had never seen before. A user named I Am Real Life seemed to know all the shows that were broadcasted on Channel 21, and here are two I've never heard of. The Fallen Angel and Life. I Am Real Life described it as a reasonably light show about a guy rambling on and on in front of a TV about how he must please Satan and appease him before it's too late. Paint with a Soul. I Am Real Life and another user called Siggy92 were discussing this show. They described it as Blair Witch-like, and as it consisted of a cameraman wandering around a forest at night doing nothing exciting. I'll go looking for the conversation and see if I can get the link. Question, where's Mr. Barrett or the guy who wore the costume? Answer, if I did know, I would have said earlier. I have no idea where this guy is or if he's dead or alive. Hopefully dead. When I see my dad's friend, I will ask him about this. Maybe I can get a more definite answer. Question, what did Mr. Bear do to the children? This is by far the most common question I've been asked. I found this out in October via my dad's friend, a retired Chaldean regional officer. Apparently, the man playing Mr. Bear took the kids out of the house and into the forest nearby. What he did there, the police are not exactly sure how it happened, but 16 charred bodies of children between the ages of 4 to 13 were found in 15 by 15 foot ditch deep within the forest. My dad's friend didn't want to go into exact details, but I'm seeing him next Thursday anyway, so maybe I can extort more information from him then. That's all I have for now. Thanks for keeping an interest in my blog. I will try to gather as much information as I can for my next post. I've actually been getting pretty interested in this myself. It should be my right to know what the hell happened. Update, January 14th, 2010. I'm sorry I haven't posted anything for a while. I kind of lost interest in this blog since I hit a standstill while looking for more information on the identity of the owner of Chaldean Local 21. However, a few weeks ago I struck gold. I found some answers surprisingly from the father of a kid I used to babysit. He lives just across from my street, and I used to look after his kids when they were younger. He currently doesn't have a job. He lived near the woods outside of Chaldean and witnessed the owner's activities in the woods. His name is Anthony Paulo, or Pollo. I'm not sure if it's Spanish or not. Alright. When he lived in a small bungalow outside the woods, he would often venture in to smoke a joint of marijuana or two before returning to his work as a woodcraftsman. Paulo or Pollo, however you want to pronounce it, described that sometimes he would hear voices of children coming from deeper within the woods, and a glowing light off in the distance. Paulo or Pollo told me that these events started in late 1997. Note this is around Chaldean Local 21 and began airing. He apparently became annoyed by this happening every once in a while and eventually went to investigate. Paulo or Pollo?
I'm pretty sure it's Pollo.
Pollo, okay. Well, we'll just call him Pollo then. If I'm wrong, but you know, it doesn't really change much about the story. Alright, Pollo then described the whole scene, what the whole scene looked like when he got there. A group of kids, he said about 13 to 17 and ages 5 to 12, gathered around a large fire pit with burning fire. With them was a single adult. Pollo talked to the man, nothing unusual except the unkempt appearance of a crack addict, as well as his constant twitching, and asked what he was doing out in the forest with children. The man said they were on a camping trip, something they frequently did. Pollo not suspecting anything. Chaldean has one of the lowest crime rates in Canada. Simply left it at that and told them to be quieter. Pollo then paused for a while before telling me that they never became quieter. In fact, sometimes he heard loud chanting from the children in an unknown language. He didn't bother meeting with the man again as he was moving anyway. He told Pollo that the man was probably the owner of Chaldean Local 21, but he doubted it, as he heard that the man was moving to Pickering by several other residents near the area. Here's what I know now. The man would take his kids into the woods regularly for camping. Fire pit Pollo described maybe the hole of the bodies of the children were found in. The children Pollo saw are probably the ones found dead. The man moved to a city called Pickering, a smaller city east of Toronto. I will discuss this with my dad's friend, the ex-cop, and see if it matches anything the police knew about the man. I also want to see if he has any other knowledge of what was aired around Chaldean Local 21. Update, February 10th, 2010. Good news, guys. I talked to my dad's friend and he disclosed a lot of information for me. First, I asked if the police had any information on the man who ran Chaldean Local 21. He replied that they only have had the same leads for years and have never found a suspect. However, the Peel Region police officer do have some of the tapes found in the house. Kilden Local 21 was broadcasted from. He took me over so I could watch a few. I guess I haven't said much about him yet. My dad's friend's name is Mitchell Wilson. A pretty nice guy. He seems to understand my thirst for knowledge on what happened during the late 90s in that house. He feels it was wrong that my dad went so long without telling me much. He took me to Davis Road Police Station. If you don't know, that's the largest station in Kelden, and one of the largest within the Peel region itself. Each of the main stations around Peel has some of the tapes. I was able to watch all of the footage that Davis Road Station has. Unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to take any recordings home for obvious reasons. Paint with the Soul, Episode 10, Garbage Thrown Away. Paint with the Soul shows that I Am Real Life and Siggy 92 discussed a Neo-Seeker. I told the police about this and they informed me that 12 episodes of the show were made and broadcasted between December 5th, 1997 and January 8th, 1998. Exactly as I Am Real Life and Siggy 92 described, the episode opened with the cameraman wandering around in a forest. It appeared to be during the evening as it seemed the sun was setting. The cameraman walked the path until he got to an area where there was a lot of garbage lying in the leaves. The cameraman looked around with various wrappers, bottles, bags, and boxes, making sure each item got a few seconds of screen time. The camera then focused on a single area before the man spoke. I recall he said in a very timid, quiet voice, and I swear I've heard it all somewhere else before, like on another Chaldean Local 21 show. I could barely listen to what he was saying, but he mainly talked about how humans are garbage, or something that had to do with saving ourselves by cleaning up the trash. Us. It actually sounded foolish, but still, the feeling of dread came over me. I mean, the forest was possibly where the bodies were found, right? Mr. Bear's Cellar, Episode 25. When the police administrator brought this tape in, I actually said, "Oh, shit," and chuckled a bit out loud. Of course, I got stares from the staff, but Wilson explained to them about my little experience with Mr. Bear and how I still kept the letter he sent me. Like the previous episodes, this one included the guy wearing a bear mascot costume. The episode began with Mr. Bear waddling over to his cellar door with a bottle of orange juice in his paws. On the ground were 16 shot glasses as well as a small bottle that contained an unknown liquid. Mr. Bear poured an equal amount of orange juice into each glass before opening the smaller bottle and depositing one drop into the glasses. Mr. Bear then went off camera and there were some minor sounds such as shuffling. Mr. Bear emerged from behind the camera's location. Following him were 16 children. Some looked as young as 4, while others looked as though they were practically teenagers. As the children entered, the administrator commented that this is the only episode that showed all 16 victims. The kids all looked rather content except for this one, which had visible bruises on his face. Unlike the other kids, he had a more fearful expression. He also looked to be about 11 or 12, which caused me to recognize him. He was that kid who asked about his sister and subsequently met with an unknown fate at the end of episode 23. That one episode I watched during July 1999. When I told the administrator this, he confirmed that it was the same kid. He was also featured in episode 24, an episode that only aired once at 3 o'clock in July 1999. The police still have not found the tape. Mr. Bear then broke into song singing about citrus fruits and how good vitamin C was for you. I could barely hear the lyrics as they were muffled by the bear mask. The kids all drank their juice, the one from episode 23 doing it somewhat reluctantly. The episode ended. After viewing the tapes in possession of the Davis Reed police station, I'm satisfied but only temporarily. I still want to know the whole story. The police just keep giving me the same crap about the creator of the Chaldean Local 21 being a fetishist pedophile as well as a parent cultist. I'll sign off for now and get into the university first and get information later. Hopefully I'll get back to this blog as soon as possible. Update, May 8th, 2010. Last month I finally got my G2 license in Ontario, Canada that allows you to drive a car by yourself and some passengers after about 6 months. I of course took advantage of this and drove into Chaldean for a little Sunday drive. Since I hadn't updated this blog in a while, I figured I might as well visit the house where the infamous channel of my childhood was located. The house looked different than when I last saw it in October. The place was no longer used as a daycare and just sat there abandoned. However, it did have a for sale sign showing that someone still owned it, wanting to get rid of it though. The abandoned house drew fuzzy memories from my mind, mainly of the day my dad took me to visit Mr. Bear. A feeling of dread came upon me. What happened to the children while they were living in that house? I walked up the steps to the front door and peered in through the window. Inside I could see a nearly empty hallway with a few boxes at the end. the end of the hallway to the right was an open doorway, presumably leading to the kitchen. To the left were two doors, apparently both leading to the rooms visible through the windows outside. I wondered where the cellar entrance was located and whether it had been sealed up. I walked around to the back of the house and found my answer. Two wooden doors lying at an almost flat angle were padlocked shut. This had led to the cellar. Not wanting to hang around, you cannot imagine what was going on in my mind at that time, I departed. Behind that house, the empty field continued until I reached a dense forest that lined the horizon. I wondered if this was the forest where the bodies of the children were found. I thought to myself, fuck it, and proceeded to walk across the field behind my house into the forest. The forest was oddly quiet, save for a few periodic sounds of a woodpecker drilling into a distant tree. I cautiously made my way deeper into the woods, not really caring for the fact that I had no idea where I was going. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like something I had to find. I came to a thinner part of the woods and a few tiny houses in the distance. Pollo's place crossed my mind, and I wondered if one of these homes had belonged to him. I neared a small clearing in which I could see 3 adequately sized logs gathered around the black charred area, showing a small fire had been lit there recently. Hey, get the fuck out of our fort! These words nearly gave me a heart attack. I turned to my left and saw 2 dark-colored people running towards me. My initial thought was to run, however, as they came closer, I saw they were really just kids in their early teens, possibly 13 or 14, maybe even 12. As they approached me, they realized my size as well. I'm 6'1", while they could have been no bigger than 5'8". One might have been 5'7". We said to get the fuck out. The larger one, who was wearing a Slipknot shirt, and said half-heartedly. I stood my ground and shrugged. The shorter one, wearing the Metallica shirt, swung out a butterfly knife and held it in my direction. No, you wouldn't want to, I said in a deep, serious tone, trying to sound as badass as possible. I pulled out my cell phone. The 2 kids withdrew. The one in the Metallica shirt pulling away the knife. Look, dude, we don't like people in our fort, so can you just go? The one in the Slipknot shirt said, obviously intimidated. I had no business in the forest anyway, so I uttered a simple fine and turned before I realized I had great opportunity. Did you hear of the guy who murdered a bunch of kids in these woods about 13 years ago? Asked the kids. The 2 looked at each other in confusion before the one wearing the Metallica shirt answered. Yeah, everyone knows about that guy, he said to me as if I were stupid. The kid in the Slipknot shirt continued. He still lives around here in the storm drain. My big brother's friend said he saw him in a bear costume once, wandering the forest at night. My instincts told me this was probably a lie, and the owner of the Chaldean Local 21 is probably long gone, only existing as folklore in the smaller, isolated community. However, as a human, the thought of the mysterious unknown sparks interest with me. Where is the storm drain? I asked, just out of curiosity. I don't actually believe this kid's story. The kid in the Metallica shirt stared at me for a few moments, his eyes seemingly full of annoyance yet curiosity for me. You're not from around here, are you? Why did you even come here? Now, I do admit I was slightly startled by the nature of this question. However, I figured I might as well explain why I was there, just in case people mistook my intentions. I told the 2 kids about the experience with the man in Chaldean Local 21, and that I'd come to maybe seek out some sort of closure, although even I wasn't exactly sure. The kids seemed familiar with the channel as they smiled and looked to each other when I mentioned it. They also became more understanding and gave me a detailed description of how to get to the storm drain. Shortly after, I decided to turn around the way I came and head back to the house, leaving the kids at their fort. But now you're probably wondering why I left out such detail about what the kids had told me just now. It's because I'm choosing to conclude what I've gathered now. Here's what the kids told me in detail. The storm drain lies ahead of the kids' fort, the same direction I was heading. The drain ends at a smaller river where access to the water is drained out. Near here is a small playground. The kids have told me people rarely use it. The man supposedly lives in a large pipe that rainwater drains out of, although always either wearing a bear mask or a mask in full body bear costume. People have seen him. Note, I do not believe this is true, and in fact, simply a myth made by the residents of Chaldean. The story does, however, does not seem plausible in any way. Why did no one call the police? Didn't this guy look suspicious? And other questions like these leave the story invalid. I may visit the storm drain not because I believe the story, but because I want an excuse to revisit Chaldean, so this blog doesn't die with no more tapes to watch. I don't know what to talk about anymore. Thanks for continuing to support me in my blog. I know many are looking forward to information about Chaldean during the year 1999, and I will do my best to continue to research into the topic. This has been Elliot signing out. Update, October 7th, 2010. Wow, nearly 5 months since I last updated. I'm guessing everyone pretty much thinks I was dead, right? Thankfully I'm not, but in all seriousness, I've really been busy these past few months, and a blog about something that could have killed me as a kid is a little low on my current priorities list. I'm living in Waterloo, Ontario, attending the University of Waterloo for computer engineering. Yeah, I'm a keener. As you might imagine, engineering is no walk in the park, so obviously I'd forgot about this blog, but as you can see now, I'm back. And for those that don't know, a keener is actually a word for an overachiever or nerd or just,
Like me, I was not aware of that.
Yeah. I didn't think you would. I had to look it up myself when I was writing this, rewriting this to my Word document and editing it for grammar, using Grammarly. I'm like, what's a keener? Is that actually a word? And then I looked up and I'm like, oh, okay. But anyway, I remembered to visit the storm drain the kids from the Chaldean Forest told me about. It was out in a clearing between the wooded areas nearby a marsh. Unfortunately, I found absolutely nothing save for a turtle that had retreated into its built-in home. When it saw me, I snapped some pics of the pipe, which I have posted as well. Also, let me tell you, it was not a storm drain like they said it was. What I saw was a simple pipe, possibly to channel the excess water from the marsh. However, when I returned from Chaldean, I simply kept putting off uploading everything until I forgot about my blog. It just didn't seem important anymore. Please forgive me. It wasn't until recently that I'm now interested in the case again. On September 10th, I received an email from the email address returntheb@hotmail.com. Funny, am I right? Well, it gets better. I'm going to copy and paste this exact email the guy sent me. Dear Elliot, my dear, dear boy, you see, the story may or may not be accurate, but it could happen. There are many slots for airtime. If you have the money, you can have a public access TV channel. Some public access TV channels share airtime, like EWTN, a religious channel based out of Michigan that shows a Catholic-based programming, but during the off-air hours have independent shows or just blue screen. Cable networks have empty channels available for rent space, so the scenario of a pedal renting a channel on a basic TV is not far-fetched at all. However, public access TV is widely reviewed and can be terminated at any time. These are the rules for the United States, not for Canada, where the story took place. So if this happened in the US, the pedo would be tracked and arrested immediately. Well, actually, it says immediately, but which means in time, versus immediately, which means right now.
The second, yep.
Yep. Yes, the story could happen, but is unlikely. 100 fuzzy hugs, Mr. Bear. Obviously, this letter is fake and sounds almost corrupted. But I'd still like to thank whoever sent it, though they could use some English lessons. Just reading this letter creeped me out because of it. I'm now full of this new interest to continue my blog. I guess it's just fun trying to pursue mysteries I've always questioned. Now my roommate knows about all of this. He thought the letter was authentic and actually seemed more scared than I was for a second, but then shrugged it off. So I did too. I mean, what are the chances of this being real? How would Mr. Bear know about all this public access TV? And about when I went to Chaldean on those occasions. More or less knew my email or me still being interested in his seller. I'm going to send a reply at return the B. Or to return to... Yeah, okay. Well, just looking at the email address, you could tell someone wanted to freak me out. It didn't really work, though. Although to whomever you are, thank you for sparking my interest back in the entire matter. Maybe I can find out more about what happened to Mr. Bear. Hopefully, because... although I don't buy that email, a part of me still feels anxious. Thank you to all those who are still following me and have become avid fans. You're why I choose to continue to do this. Thanks, guys. Update, November 7th, 2010. Well, I can't believe this blog hasn't been deleted yet. I haven't posted anything for so long. I have my reasons, and I'd rather not discuss them just yet. It's been a somewhat traumatic year for me. Some of you were right. I shouldn't have gone back trying to relive the mysteries of childhood, but I couldn't resist. It has been over a year since my last post and a lot has happened. Let's recap where I'm at now regarding the whole Mr. Bear incident. Returntheb@hotmail.com is no longer in use. I tried replying to the email, but I get no reply. I tried again a while back, still no response. I actually moved up to Ottawa, the capital of Canada, for those who don't know, for university. So I haven't been back to Chaldean We're back home in the Peel region for a while. I've had my reasons for leaving, as you could guess why. I've had to make a new email account because people keep prank mailing pretending to be Mr. Bear. Thanks a lot, guys. Not. Why have I ventured back into the blog? Mitchell Wilson, remember my dad's ex-cop friend, gave me a phone call on October 23rd about a tape found in the branch of the Brampton Public Library. Brampton is my hometown, in case you haven't picked up on that. He claims he isn't allowed to discuss the tape's contents with me as it's still in evidence, but he still asked me to come check it out when I return home. The tape got the gears grinding again because we all know what was on the last videos I saw. I can only imagine who can be on it. I'm guessing it must have something to do with Chaldean Local 21. I guess I wanted to say I'm continuing this blog and thank you to everyone who still follows it. I don't know when my next entry will be, but I will write what I find when I see the tape. I don't know what to expect, but the idea of seeing another video has interested me in this whole mystery all over again. Elliot. Update January 21st, 2011. It has been a long year for me. University has been giving me the usual sleepless nights, especially since I transferred to Ottawa, which was a place to party, sarcasm, but now I'm back home with my dad in Brampton, the town I grew up in. I got home on December 18th and have been visiting with friends and family, or at least that's what I would instead have done, now that the festive holiday cheer that I usually have at this time of month is absent. To answer the hundreds of emails and comments I get, I did see tapes that my dad's friend Mitchell Wilson promised to show me. These tapes, however, act as a curse. I want to know more, yet I want to forget everything. I couldn't help it. I need to see those tapes for all of you who are just as fascinated by the enormous man in the bear suit. However, after viewing these tapes, I feel a pit of dread deep inside me again. That feeling where I know all those kids in the videos are dead, that I could have been one of those kids, and that humanity is a dark, dark place. If you haven't skipped to this paragraph for the juicier details below, thank you for listening to my rambling. On January 1st, I called Mitchell Wilson and asked if there was a time when I could come by and view the tapes. Things were pretty slow at the station because of a snowstorm, so he said I could come down any time that day. The videos were located at a branch not too far from me, so I braved the slushy roads and terrible Brampton drivers and made my way to the Peel Region Police Station located at Bramelia City Center. I met Wilson at the front desk where he led me to a second floor and into a small office, instructed me to have a seat and wait while he got the tapes. Before leaving the office, he turned to me and said, "I know you're curious, but are you sure you want to do this?" Of course I did, or at least I thought so. Besides, Wilson's friend had pulled many strings to get me in there, and I didn't want to waste this opportunity. This particular station had 2 tapes on hand. However, I was only able to watch a few minutes of footage because the second tape was apparently too damaged to be played on a VCR. Mr. Bear's Cellar, episode 30. Mr. Bear never ceases to disturb me, especially after what almost happened when I was younger. This episode took place outside in a dark forest at dusk, making it slightly hard to see, especially considering the quality of the film. A trademark of anything from Chaldean Local 21. The episode started with the camera being held in the paws of Mr. Bear, aiming it at himself. The bear mask looked more sinister in the shadows of the trees. The unmistakable muffled voice spoke up. "Hello, children. Today I will be doing a wonderful thing for my friends. I'll be delivering them to a faraway land where they will surely be happy." Mr. Bear turned the camera around to show an ATV with an attached trailer, but what stood out most was the trailer contained 7 motionless children lying side by side. "This here is the first load, but more will be on their way soon." Mr. Bear turned around and pointed the camera at the burlap tarp spread on the ground. He picked the tarp up, revealing a large hole that must have been 12 feet deep and about 15 feet wide. The rest of the episode consisted of Mr. Bear taking each kid and dropping them off into a hole. I asked Wilson if they were dead, to which he shook his head, replied, "Not yet." Soon all the kids were in a pit, some were in awkward positions due to being tossed in, but they remained unconscious. The vitamin C will surely help these children on the great journey that awaits them, Mr. Bear mentioned as he panned the camera towards multiple bottles of gasoline behind a bush. The camera zoomed into the bottles as Mr. Bear hummed before the episode ended. Wilson revealed to me that these were 7 of the 16 victims found burnt to a crisp. The gasoline is what the man playing Mr. Bear used to light them on fire. A pit full of burning children. Who the fuck would do that? A feeling of dread found me once again when I realized I could have been one of those kids. Wilson then explained to me that he had previously lied. The other tape confiscated by Brumella Police Branch did indeed work and contained the film of the actual burning. However, he felt that I wouldn't handle the disturbing and graphic nature of the episode, and you know what? Maybe I can't. I don't even want to see it. I'm satisfied for now, but I just need some time to get myself together. The thing is, the man who ran Chaldean Local 21 is still out there. More to come soon, Elliot. INRI. Once upon a time, there lived a boy named Elliot. Elliot was a clever boy who loved playing with his friends. One day, he watched a lovely children's show about a bear and his children's friends. The children loved helping each other as good children should, but they also loved the bear. The bear loved the children, and since the children were so good at helping him and the fallen angel, the children and the bear wanted to play together forever with the help of their angel friend. But the fallen angel needed even more help, so the children had to give the ultimate sacrifice. Because that's what friends do, Elliot. They help each other. Help us, Elliot. Burn with us, Elliot. I want you, Elliot. He wants you, Elliot. Come back to my cellar. Pretty please, with sugar and icing on top? Mr. B. INRI. Update, April 5th, 2011. I wanted to update more. I indeed did. However, certain circumstances have turned me off the whole Chaldean Local 21 thing. I'd had hundreds of emails about my blog and even been contacted by a magazine about my story. But now it's time to come clean to everyone. Where have I been for an entire year? The story of Pandora's box is accurate, and I opened it. I opened it when I watched the second tape in the possession of the Bramwell Police Branch. The other subject I'd like to address is the number of joke fake emails I've been getting from people claiming to be Mr. Bear. Let's start with the second tape, which traumatized me into stopping my search temporarily. After a few weeks of playing silent, I decided to ask Mitchell Wilson if I could view that infamous second tape he talked about. I don't know why, I just felt like viewing the tape would give me some closure. Wilson was obviously reluctant to show me, but I was persistent. He gave me an offer. I was still interested in, by the time I turned 20, he would show me the tape. Not being able to do much else, I just played the waiting game. By the time of my 20th birthday rolled around, I was definitely still interested in viewing the tape. I gave Wilson a call, during which he admitted he'd hoped I would forget about asking him again, but I was not taking no for an answer. You really don't need to see it, he kept telling me. But I did need to see it. I had to at this point. Sure enough, he invited me to the Bramwell Police Branch on Monday afternoon. Having watched every Saw film and in a video of animal slaughterhouses in my entire classes, I was sure I'd be able to handle whatever the tape could throw at me. How naive I was. Mr. Bear's Cellar, episode 31. When Wilson went to collect the tape from evidence, the officers in charge of the evidence room shook his head at me, his face saying, "What are you doing?" Wilson explained that the tape includes the last known episode of Mr. Bear's Cellar. I rightfully assumed I would be seeing the fate of the children and began to feel a sense of dread. The episode was opened inside a forest, the usual one from the previous episodes. This fact took me a while to realize because it was night, and the trees and leaves just looked like shapes dancing around in the darkness. A faint glow of light was present on the right side of the screen. There wasn't any clear audio. It appeared to be a windy night, yet the trees weren't making any noise. Slowly the camera began to pan towards the glow. Feeling smoke rise from the hole within the tips of the flames peeking over the top. Wilson paused at this point. "Are you sure you want to see this?" he asked me. I insisted on it, even though a voice in my head was telling me not to. The video continued. The cameraman moved towards the hole, showing a pit of fire. This was the hole I'd seen in the previous episode, only this time it was filled with shapes. I could see figures moving around, fluttering, flailing, some motionless. I knew perfectly well what they were. The camera began to adjust the light. In burning flesh, red, black, and a blur of surreal movements and colors. I wish I could forget what I saw, but you can't forget a scene like this. This was not a horror movie, this was reality. Human beings were being killed horrifyingly. A fate that I could have potentially met. You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you? The video suddenly cut to dawn, the camera now positioned farther away from the hole. The fire was out there, however, there was still smoke rising up. A figure was up ahead. I recognized it right away. The Mr. Bear suit was laid out on the ground. Empty, it looked just as unnerving. The costume was laid out in the shape of a cross. The cameraman did a lap around the suit, treating it like it was a treasured artifact. Placed at the head of the costume was a sign in red bold letters. INRI was printed. The cameraman moved back to the end of the suit, zooming in on the bear's face. The episode finally ended. I was speechless. It was like a dream. You could find many terrible things on the internet, but I'd never seen anything like this. Wilson asked if I was okay, and I replied with a shaky yes. I assured him that as we left that I was fine, and that the video gave me some closure over the whole incident. He didn't seem too confident in me, but I left it at that. He was right, though. I had nightmares for weeks. I gave up. I didn't care about the whole thing anymore. A sick man burned many kids alive, attracting them with a fake kids TV channel. I could have been one of his victims, yet I'm still here. I suppose I should be grateful, but I feel guilty. Am I still here only by pure luck? 10 months later, I'm back, but now I need to address something else. My email has been flooded with messages. Some people ask for more details. Some ask if I can upload the tapes, and some email me claiming to be Mr. Bear. First, I cannot get the videos uploaded as they're A, in police possession as evidence, and B, I have no idea how to transfer VHS onto a computer. As for people pretending to be Mr. Bear, you're not fooling me. When you have dozens of people pretending to be the same person, it doesn't work. I've even seen a fake Caledon Local 21 YouTube channel. Cute, but still not accurate. Even more annoying is the fact someone hacked my account just to put up some demented poem about me on this blog. I'll leave it in the entry above this one, just to show you guys. I've contacted my webmaster about the submission and was told it was posted on Halloween. Ooh, spooky. Attached to the email paintwiththeb@aol.com, which I assume is another joke email. I'm over episode 31 now. Images of what I saw stick with me for a while, but I do want to do one last hurrah. I want to get in contact with Mitchell Wilson again and hopefully get set up with the tapes in the possession of the other Peel police branches. I'll try to update you guys as soon as possible. I'm sure this won't take so long again. Thank you to everyone who still reads this, Elliot. Appearance. While 1999 is a complete story rather than an individual character, the main antagonist in the novel, Mr. Bear, is the image most commonly associated with the account. In the depiction is the tiny scale that shows reflected in the fact that he's shown to be wearing a meager budget moth-eaten bear suit. Some versions' eyes are missing or the mouth is unusually distorted. For example, appearing more circular than the actual mouth or being full of more human-looking or broken teeth. Origin and development. 1999 differs from the majority of other creepypastas. It makes no claim to have a supernatural or monstrous element other than the human monster in the form of a disguised child murderer. Where it does share traits with other creepypastas in its concept, 1999 is an example of a recognized subgenre within creepypasta known as lost episode narratives. This particular form of creepypasta story is usually concerned with missing, hidden, or sometimes secret episodes of popular television shows. Most often kids shows that have some sinister, disturbing, or altogether less wholesome tinge to them. Subgenre also covers tales of shows that only a few witnesses claim to have seen or which many can partially recollect but are not officially recorded. In many cases of these stories, such as 1999, the shows in question have had very small viewerships and are often public access television shows. This plot is intended to make it more plausible that the show has only been seen or only will be recollected by a small number of people. As the initial draft of 1999 was posted by its author Camden Lamont on November 14th, 2009, the story posted to his Slack Lane blog would be revised and improved from this point until April of 2011. The story was posted to 4chan's X-Paranormal board on September 9th of 2012. Interestingly enough, the anonymous poster submitted the report while stating he wanted to look back on the story and suggest he was posting it to inquire whether there was a follow-up or resolution after the cliffhanger ending. How this post was made is unusual. The allusions the poster makes to the story would not only seem to suggest that the author expected the community to already be familiar with the story, or as if it was already widespread, but that they would be familiar enough with the tale to know that it ended on a cliffhanger and even be potentially aware of the same continuations of the story. After this point, most of the conversation about the story centered around what happened next scenarios. Readers did head back to the original Slack Lane blog, though some might suggest that his posting on 4chan would be a clever way for Lamont to drive attention to his story, especially if a sequel or continuations were planned. No official resolution has ever come from Lamont. The story remains a cliffhanger, which has seemed to indicate it was not him who posted it to 4chan. In fact, the story gathered far more traction and popularity in 2014 after it was read aloud on YouTube by such channels as Creeps, McPasta, and Some Ordinary Gamers. Some tracks have even uploaded supposed episodes of the fictional series from Caledon Local 21. They were a complete distortion, and tracking lines indicate the video had been taken from an old VHS, despite the aspect ratio giving away the piece was a far more modern creation. The same year the story appeared on Creep EE, and creepypasta websites, respectively. The fan-made wiki for 1999 Creepypasta features detailed breakdowns and overviews of each episode of this fictional television show. It also occurred for that other famous creepypasta show, Candle Cove. It displays images supposedly of Mr. Bear, though there are many variants and little consistency in the appearance. In another turn of events, remarkably similar to Candle Cove, the fictional television show featured an actual television show when 1999 was adapted in 2017 for the presentation on Amazon. The adaptation, which remains faithful to the source material, was produced in collaboration with Lamont, and he is listed as the executive producer. And that's the end of our show today. Thank you for tuning in. This was a really long read even for this channel, and final thoughts as to that story. Very well documented as far as like the overall synopsis with respect to what came next for the story, and also, interesting that it went from descriptive post about what it's about to the actual story itself up to the cliffhanger point, and then explained further from there, seemingly out of nowhere, which kind of blended itself interestingly to the show, and I feel was otherwise well done. And this has been Monster Mondays with the Forsaken Scribe. And did you want to give your handle?
You can find me on Olliwuud, either on Twitter or Twitch. Those links will probably be in the description. And
of course, you just have to Slack them to me. I'll put them there, and
yeah, that'll be easy enough.
Yeah, and they'll be in the description below, and my playlists will be underneath all the source links as well as the description. It basically goes description, source links, and then whatever other channels are my thing.
But just my thoughts on the story. Well, I have not kept up with any of the other stories, but from what I can gather on here, it kind of did sound like almost like a Saw / FNAF story in a sense. Some what's the word? Something very, or at least happy at first story very early on that turned out to be having a very dark history and very long-lasting years ahead, and still haunting to this day in a sense where, yes, there's some things where they will follow you to childhood, maybe not in the same way, shape, or form, but there are some things that do follow you in life. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but in this case, it's just a different shape of how it took. So I really like that story. All
right, and Mr. Olliwuud, have you any thoughts of the previous stories, if you can remember them at this point? If you can, it's fine. That one was kind of long and kind of drove attention away from the others.
Yes, I couldn't really tell anything that happened in the previous stories. Kind of just dragged my attention a lot.
Fair, and it was just a ritual pasta about how to access some unknown TV channel where you could literally be in the TV or something, I guess, and then
yes,
and then there was one about a Sirenhead where can you even trust those sirens that blare?
The channel Creepypasta, I do remember that vaguely, where that almost reminded me of, there was a similar story where I don't know what it was. Maybe it was I don't remember the story, but I do know it was something involving, a haunted universal remote where...
Oh, I think that was the story. It was called Channel Infinity.
No, well, yes, Channel Infinity, but there was a different similar story that came to mind, but I couldn't remember what it was off the top of my head.
It's okay.
Sure, it's... anyone wants a remote control where they, in a sense, control what they want, but it ended up more or less corrupting them or consuming them in a sense.
Was that click by the chance? It wasn't a story so much as it was a movie, but Adam Sandler, he gets this remote and he can skip through things that are boring to him and all that?
No, I remembered it being more haunting in a sense where it was just cursed. That sure, it was fun at first, but it just was as a facade of it consuming you in a sense.
I see.
I don't remember what the story was, but I remember reading it before.
So, if we do manage to uncover it at some point, we'll put it in the description as well. But otherwise, so we'll leave it to you guys to do your own searching because we can't do everything for you. You know, we're already spoon feeding you the stories here as it is. Anyway, so yeah, this has been Monster Mondays with the Forsaken Scribe and special guest Olliwuud. And remember, Mom's not here, kids. And that's a wrap.